Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. Dana DiPrima is supporting hardworking small and mid-sized American farmers with small actions that have a huge impact. She believes, and I wholeheartedly agree with her, that when farmers win, we all win. I found Dana's podcast, One Bite is Everything, on Apple Podcasts a few months ago. I have been an avid weekly listener. Dana is tapping into many of the same themes that I have been hearing from farmers. And although our podcasts and personalities are very different, our missions, passions, and overall goals are very similar. I reached out to Dana to interview her for my podcast as I wanted to explore the feedback that she was hearing from farmers and food businesses. She responded right away, and we set up a date and time. From that correspondence, she let me know about her nonprofit, the For Farmers Movement, and directed me to her website. And of course, I linked over and started reading about all the amazing initiatives she has going on. I came across a farm-to-table dinner fundraiser that she was hosting in the Catskills in upstate New York. So I called my friend Tim, who is usually up for a new adventure, and we signed up. A few weeks later, I found myself in the Catskills at the historic Beaverkill Valley Inn, known for being the home of fly fishing, on a beautiful Saturday evening, chatting it up with inspiring supporters and dedicated farmers while savoring a farm-to-table dinner. These types of experiences leave a profound imprint on me, especially because of the new connections that are made and the opportunity to experience a new farm community in the Catskills. Enjoy my conversation with Dana DiPrima from the One Bite is Everything podcast, and please take her message to heart. Do something to impact a small farmer today. We can all do something. It's as easy as donating $1 or shopping at a local farmer's market or farm 1 day per week. Every bit or bite counts. This is Jen Ross, your Agritourist podcast host. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, and we'd love it if you would leave us a review. Enjoy. Where are you today?
I know, exactly. Not sure. No, I'm in New York City today.
Okay, excellent. What part of the city do you live in?
Upper West.
Ah, nice. Oh, that explains some conversations I had with different people who lived on the Upper West Side. So how are you? Were you happy with the event the other day? It seemed like it went really smoothly.
You know what? You just want to, keep people from seeing your slip showing as much as possible. So I don't know. I did my best. What did you think?
I think it was excellent. I had no expectation coming in because I honestly just signed up. I literally just signed up.
Where do I find more people like you who literally just sign up? It's so good.
Well, you know what? I guess we're just passionate about the same thing. So, and I figured, you know what? I wanted to experience a real farm to table dinner. I talk about it all the time, but I haven't. There's many that I want to go to. The timing hasn't worked out. So I was like, oh, the timing was perfect with this. So
I want to go to someone else's. Let me know the next time you pick one and we can go together.
No, definitely. And there's a few in the Berkshires that I definitely want to go to. I've interviewed some of their farms and they sound amazing. Very down to earth. So I was so impressed by the inn itself that, your dinner was at. I didn't know any of its history. I met such a diverse group of people. and farmers. And I didn't realize until after I left who I was sitting next to. I don't know if you know there was a connection. I
Were you
did a
sitting
pod,
next to Larry,
Larry and yes, and Wendy.
Wendy?
I
Yeah.
that's how I knew them. But there were little hints.
That's usually what I'm like. This is Wendy and this is Larry.
Well, the funny thing was the woman at the front desk had told me about who owned and who lived at the like, she kind of alluded to it,
Oh, Lisa.
but not like we didn't get it. We just she was just kind of talking to us a lot about the history. I'm very big into history. And then when I was speaking to the couple we were sitting with, I'm terrible with names, the pulmonologist and neurologist from the Upper
Yes,
West Side.
Norma and Carl.
Yes, who were absolutely amazing.
I agree. She's hardcore good.
Yes, yes. Her story and how they met and the whole thing was, it was great. And she told me about she was talking about the membership because I didn't know there was a basketball court behind us. My daughter plays basketball, so I had noticed it. And she's like, yeah, it's a membership. And she was explaining that. And she explained the Rockefellers. And I was like, oh, and so then when they sat down, like we were just chatting. And then the funny thing is, Larry told me, he told me a story about, he mentioned Alar and apples, and Wendy was involved in that whole thing. And the coincidence there is I interviewed Michael, who owns Red Tomato, who owns the Echo certification, which came out of that whole thing. I just interviewed him a few weeks ago, and I'm going to visit him tomorrow in Providence, Rhode Island. So when Larry mentioned Alar and the apples, I'm like, Meryl Streep, the whole story of Meryl Streep. And he's like, yeah, he goes, yeah, she was involved in that whole thing. And so then I spoke to Wendy about it, and she's like, oh my God, you have to say hi to Michael for me. So she actually emailed me and she's like, please say hi to him. And so I'm definitely going
Oh,
to pass on
see.
that message. So it was just a really small world. But then
You
when
know
they were
more than I know.
talking,
This is so good.
yeah, when we were talking, they kept talking about Old McDonald Farm up the street, that they owned Old McDonald Farm. And I'm like, are they? Are they? So when we went to the bathroom before we left and I cornered the woman at the front desk. I'm like, who are Larry and Wendy? And she told me. So I was just like, okay. And my friend
Okay.
Tim had no clue the entire time.
I
He was just
love.
like, he was like butting it up with Larry and stuff. It was just really cute. They were such lovely people. And they really made my night.
Wendy
So it
was
was
so
just,
happy. Well, so they haven't been able to come the last 2 years because they have two boys and their boys have wives who are more Hamptons facing, which I think is heartbreaking in a way. But
yeah.
and they go to the vineyard also. They've always gone to the vineyard. And so anyway, I haven't hit timing right, but this time I hit it right. And Wendy was like, we are so in. We're going. I've been wanting to go. And then by happenstance, she sat at the farmer's table, which she was that she goes, that's what I mean, she doesn't need to socialize with all of us. She needs to sit at the farmer's table. So she was super excited. And then Joe and Jackie, did you meet them? You did. I
No,
introduced you to Joe
I
and
don't,
Jackie, the sheep
wait,
farmers.
no, I never met them. I
Welsh, he's
obviously saw
Welsh.
them.
Yeah, he's Welsh and she's English. Well, anyway, they were sitting at our table. And some time ago, Wendy's like, I need some sheep. Can you help me? And so I got her some sheep from Joe and Jackie. And I was like, okay, well, I'll email you. So Wendy and Joe, I had on email, and they're like, they come and deliver the sheep. And Joe, I don't know, we met and Jackie, I mean, we just like totally hit it off. And he goes, I knew I loved you, but then I find out that I'm taking 6 sheep to the Rockefellers and you didn't even say a damn thing. I was like, what am I going to say? They needed sheep. You figure it out on
No,
your own.
it's great though. It is
Funny.
humbling though, the great grandson of John D. Rockefeller, because of course I had to Google. It was, but like I said, it was a very diverse and wonderful evening. So thank you.
I'm so glad you
I'm
thank
glad that
you. I think
I
people were impressed that, people came from outside the unit there. But I will say too, Larry in particular, um, I mean, he spent the better part of his life protecting that valley. And bringing people into the valley who care deeply about conservation and
Yep.
about the land. And I think, by extension, just like the watershed and the food shed and, sort of all of that. So it's a real privilege that we have to be there
Absolutely.
and to have land there. And, my land is backed up against state land, and a lot of the land up there has been purchased by the city to protect the Propacton Reservoir, which is where 25% of New York City's water comes from. So, and there are a lot of, like incredible, environmental activists there. And I think, I really believe this, and I know they do too, is that, small scale farming goes hand in hand with, being a conservationist and being an environmentalist because, the people on the front lines of the land are the ones who are the one, they're the ones who understand what's happening with climate and what's happening with the land and,
Yep.
what we can do to, mitigate issues or, how we can prevent them.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I've been listening to your podcast for a few months. One Bite is Everything. I love it. I love how you present it too. And one of the things that is resonated with me and why I reached out to you is you're tackling a lot of relevant issues when it comes to small farming and food. And I reached out because I wanted to just have a conversation about some of the things that you are tackling. And then you brought me to your website, which I didn't know, the For Farmers movement. So before we get into all that, because there's so much you're doing and such impactful work, especially with the grants that you're giving to small farmers. Tell me about you. How did you get interested in this? Where did this passion come from? Bring me back a little bit.
Funny, I get this question a lot, and I always feel like I fail at the answer, but there are kind of a lot of them. I don't know. I grew up in a small town, playing in the dirt, and so I've always been a real like
Did you
outdoors
grow
person.
up in New York or?
North Carolina.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And I'm an only child, so, nature was my entertainer. I mean, we didn't have like overscheduling and play dates back then. You sort of like called your neighbor and what were they up to, and no one was around, so you climbed trees.
Yeah, that was the fun times. I remember that.
Right? I feel
Yep.
like, I don't know,
Taking
I
the
feel like
bike out, going to friend's house, like taking your bike to friend's house. And
yeah,
yeah, those are
miss
the
out on
days.
that these days of like, my kids who are grown would say, "Oh, I'm bored." And I'm like, "Great. That's awesome. This is so exciting." Because now you're going to invent something to do, and that's really awesome. So, I moved to New York City when I was just out of college. I met my husband, and sort of we took off on careers and being busy and working hard, and then we had little kids, and that was crazier, and going to birthday parties and soccer games and all the things that parents do. And
What was your
I
career initially? Like what were
Oh
you
gosh, I've
doing?
had a few. I always feel like any thread that runs through the work that I've done in my life is about making the world a better place. But I've done that from some very unique perspectives. I work for a congressional agency that was trying to make sure that the programs and policies that were voted on were actually functioning in the way they were intended. I worked in nonprofit organizations, sort of knitting together communities, providing opportunities for children. I switched and worked in corporate America, but at the same time, I was working to help big corporations develop, sort of re-engineer their DNA to have a heart and soul because their customers really cared about that. So figuring out how they could make a profit, but also get into their customers' pockets by way of their heart. So sort of back in the day with cause-related marketing.
Yep.
I've done a lot of grassroots organizing and, community development with, really grassroots organizations and things like that. So marketing, all the things. And I feel like, for the first time, I'm in a space where I used to be proud of my work, but it was hard to explain. Like
Okay.
I would say the headline and I could just see, boredom. I could feel it. I was like, I don't know. It would take me so long to explain to you why my work is good and now I just, I remember the first time I went to like, I hadn't been to a cocktail party where I didn't know anyone in a really long time. And I went to this cocktail party. People were like, "So what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I lead a movement that supports small farmers across the United States." And they're like, "What?" And everybody's like, "Hey, you got to talk to her." It was like, how did this happen? How are people interested? So, I mean, I'm very interested. Um, yeah. So anyway, nature was really important to me, just to go back to, how I got here. And in 2008, my husband and I bought a place in the Catskills that's not too far from where we were. Um, and, that is a lot of years later. I have wrestled it to the ground and also injected it with craziness. Like my daughter wanted chickens. We got chickens. She got goats for her birthday. I don't know why. When I was um, goats led to donkeys. I got some ducks. I've had bees for
Oh,
15
wow.
years. And I have 17 gardens. So I am very, again, like playing in the dirt, climbing trees, scraping my knees, shoveling manure and, and planting things and really enjoying it. And in 2016, I started a blog that was a little bit about like what's going on in country life and how it compares to city life, kind of. That blog sort of turned into some other things, and one of them was a podcast. I felt from the first thing that I wrote that I felt comfortable enough like sharing with the world. I was like, this should be on the radio. I really need to be on the radio. And so, I told a friend on a walk, I was like, I need to be on the radio. This is like, I feel like I do. And so I was on the radio a bunch with different hosts who would invite me to come and talk about what was happening with whatever I was doing. I started a podcast, which was then my version of radio called Talk Farm to Me. And I exclusively interviewed farmers. Really, that's it. Because I live near farmers. Um, Farmers are responsible for getting me into trouble with all of the animals that I have. They were like, I think I was like high entertainment. Like, what will she do next? Let's see how, and they're like, you're doing great. Like, get some donkeys. Why not? That's kind of, where it started. And I think as I am talking to farmers across the country, I realized something that I thought was really meaningful and very powerful and very upsetting is that farmers are virtually invisible. I think that we're incredibly disconnected from our food. Carrots come in a bag in the grocery store. They are not, I've had people come to my house and pull a carrot out of the ground and they freak out. They can't believe that's how a carrot grows. College educated, like,
No, I had that experience at my farm all the time, especially bringing kids from different areas to the farm. I always tell the story about the mint leaf that a child picked. They had this realization that mint is not an artificial flavor, that it actually comes from a plant. And that connection, like you said, we are so disconnected. Even more, like you would think it would have gotten better, but I think it has gotten worse,
hmm
a lot
Yeah.
worse.
I mean, that disconnection is a big issue. And part of that is the people who are turning a teeny tiny seed into a big, beautiful beet. They are invisible. We do not know what they do from sun up to sundown and then from sundown to sun up. We just don't really have a sense. And I mean, not to be weird and personal, but I think, we have a societal factor where people are invisible. I don't like feeling that way. I really don't. I mean, I'm not looking to be famous in any way or, I'm not trying to get attention for myself, but I know that when good people do good things, being invisible is, it's just sort of, maybe it's a factor of like having a phone and people are sitting behind these devices and, we Zoom instead of have meetings because it's so much easier, which I agree, it's so much easier. But like, how do we make life more personal? What is wrong with that? What is wrong with having, a bad day and having people not ignore the fact that it's uncomfortable you're having a bad day or having a huge victory for you personally that nobody wants to celebrate. Like, I don't like any of that. And I feel like that farmers are living in this space where they are having huge challenges. They are not pretty challenges, and they are indicators of things that are wrong in our society. They are on the front lines of climate issues. They're on the front lines of decaying communities that we're ignoring. They're on the front lines of, our health deteriorating and people eating way too much processed food instead of these beautiful vegetables that are more inconvenient to get than you would like, So I just didn't, I mean, I really feel like that invisibility factor was big for me personally in terms of like, I know what that feels like. I think it's wrong, and I'm going to step into a space for these farmers because I believe in what they're doing. And I believe that small farmers are the solution to so many problems that we have in our society. I mean, especially health, especially knitting together communities. Our regional economies are essential. When we have a crisis, we have to turn to our neighbors. We cannot turn to a global supply chain. It falls apart. It's done it in front of our eyes, and it's going to do it again.
Yep. We
And
saw it
so,
in COVID, during COVID.
yeah. And,
Yep.
we're completely, we completely have amnesia for that. It's like it's over. We don't have to mask anymore. We can still get our carrots in a bag at the grocery store until we
Yep.
can't. And then people are
Exactly.
going to scramble back to their small farmers again. And I just feel like, my life is so enriched by inviting you to dinner and telling you all about the farmer who grew the incredible cows that make our beef and how I'm cooking it and what I'm pairing it with and how I know them. And that is like, it is a magical night when that happens. And it's,
Absolutely. So you transitioned the podcast then tell me about that transition, and then tell me, I would like to know, explain about the Four Farmers movement, because you have many great things on that website. And obviously, I do want to focus a lot on the grants because I think they're so important. And I definitely want to get that out there because I know, I personally know from when I was a farmer, and I know from all the farmers I interview, how hard it is to get a grant, the obstacles, the paperwork. A lot of them are reimbursable grants, and some of those reimbursements disappeared this year. Tell me about your transition in the podcast, and was that a different priority that you were focusing on, and then the Four Farmers movement and everything amazing that you're doing there.
I think it's the same priority all the time. So everything that I do leads, all roads lead to small farmers. And I'm going to say something that's not, I don't think it's a very popular thing to say, but I stand in the gap between consumers and farmers. And I am cranking that handle to try to bring the two of them closer together. And if you are not a person who is farmer facing, if you don't care about your small farmers, as I've mentioned, right? Like we're disconnected. Like, how am I going to connect you? I'm not going to connect you by saying, listen to Talk Farm to me. You don't care about farmers. I want you to listen to Talk Farm to me. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it's a great name. I love my logo. I love the whole thing. It was I could talk very easily about it. The transition for me was very hard, but what I want is for you to care deeply about the food on your plate because you love to cook, because you love delicious food, because you're on a health kick, because you have a family and they're picky. You've got people with allergies or they're sick or whatever, right? So the food on your plate is super important. It's something that we all have in common. And so what I wanted to show was the connection between the food on your plate and the rest of the world. And that really leads to health, it leads to community, it leads to the environment, and it leads to those regional economies that I mentioned. And so I repositioned the podcast. So in a way, we talk about the food on your plate. And more often than not, the answer to the big question is know your small farmers. So I think, a transition like that takes a minute. It did not like come easy for me. It was hard, to get my head around and to get my head into. But it gives me a lot of leeway to interview more people in different spaces and also to do sort of some solo episodes where I'm just talking about a particular issue or yeah, so it was hard. I had an
Was
advisor who
I was
helped.
just going to ask you who helped you with that, if anybody.
I participated in a year-long mastermind with a
Oh,
guy named Kevin Schmidland.
okay.
Have you ever heard of him?
The name is familiar.
He had a podcast called Grow the Show, which is really focused on your podcast. He's very, very smart. And he's transitioned his podcast now. It's still similar, but he's really focused. It's called Chief Audience Officer. He's still focused on like how, if you have a podcast, you want to make a podcast and have no one listen to it? No, of course not. You want to grow your audience. So how are you going to do that? And he was just like at my side. And we'd had really hard conversations. He's not particularly farm facing. I'm like, Kevin, if you're not farm facing, you're certainly not going to listen to anything that has the word farm in it. And he's like, damn straight, not going to do it. I said, so we got into this and he was incredibly supportive and the show got picked up by a network after I changed its name.
Hey, that's
I'm pretty
terrific.
happy about that. So that's very helpful.
How long were you doing the original podcast for, and how long has it been One Bite is Everything?
I started the podcast in 2019.
Okay.
And so I think it's been One Bite is Everything for a little over a year, maybe a year.
Oh, okay. So fairly recently then.
Yes.
Okay, wow. Congratulations. That's terrific.
You know, it's a labor of love. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
and I'm constantly trying to figure out like, yeah, how do I grow my audience? How do I get more people? Not because I want an audience, but because I want to have I want this conversation to be ongoing. And I mean, I'm always happiest when someone reaches out to me from listening to the podcast and says, I love your podcast. And how can we have a conversation? That's what you're doing. And that's really the goal. It's the whole enchilada. I think that we need to be talking about this more, like how we're failing ourselves by not supporting our small farmers. Or from the other direction, like the thing I care about most is having delicious food on my plate. Where do I find the most delicious food? I'm a home cook, I'm a chef. I just care. It's a hobby, whatever it is. Or, what's going on with rural America? Like, look at our politics. We're so colossally divided and vitriolic. And like, we've left rural America behind. And now we're cutting healthcare and public radio that rural America, depends on. So we're not doing a good job. And like, how do we do better? How do we have that conversation to say like, okay, this is important?
Yeah. So tell me about, you have on your website, so you have farmers market guide, farmers grants, a local food challenge, obviously the podcast, love for farmers, and the farmers market treasure hunt. I noticed. So tell me about some of those initiatives.
Well, again, like I said, if I'm standing in that gap, if you are, if I brought you in some way and you're slightly interested, you're like, wait a minute, I could be a little bit more local. What's a local food challenge? What do you do? So, that can be it's meant to be very like entry level, like let's just get a little more local. Like what if let's just do it right now. Go open my refrigerator. And you'll be like, Dana, that is not local. Where did that come from? You know? And so I'm
And
like,
you probably
okay,
won't
I
know the
know,
answer.
I know. Like there's no reason to be a perfectionist. But like right now I have organic valley milk in my refrigerator. And when I'm closer to the farms upstate, I get local milk. So, like, what if I just do that one thing and I commit myself to only having local milk from a small dairy? What if I do that? What's the impact? Well, now I know my dairy farmer, she has 70 cows. You know, I actually picked up cheese from them specifically for the farm dinner that we had. And, I'm very proud of them. They're hanging in there when other dairies are failing.
Yeah.
So, and I want to be the difference. I want them to know that when they go back to the little town store where they, supply their Greek yogurt, that it's always gone because I bought it all. You know, I
Yep.
want to have that role. And so the local food challenge has, some of it is, consciousness raising, just like go in your fridge and make a list. What is local, what is not? Or how many miles is, on the sriracha in your refrigerator door? Like, why don't we just know? Just to know. I made a
Right.
beef stew. I made a beef stew in the winter. It was, I had local beef. It was from like 30 miles from my farm and some things from my garden, garlic and other things. 17,000 miles, my beef stew. So I think it's just like it's a consciousness thing. Like why let's not put our head in the sand. Let's just like sort of figure out where we stand and how come like that seems silly, 17,000 miles. I can do way better than that. Like what was tipping the scales? So again, I'm standing in between farmers and non-farmers and turning that crank and trying to get them a little bit closer. Farmers Market Field Guide is really to help you be a better farmers market shopper. And, understanding also what the impact that you have when you do shop at a farmer's market, because like, and let's just like admit, like it's hard sometimes to get to the farmer's market. My life is busy, I'm running in 20 directions. I'm here, I'm there, whatever. Okay, I missed my farmer's market this week. You do not, it's sort of like you don't have to beat yourself up. Just do your best. And when you get there, there are all different kinds of things that can support you. Maybe you can join a CSA. Maybe some of them have like group deliveries, all different kinds of things. Maybe there are some things that are staples like honey that you can buy and you don't have to go every week. So how can you, get closer to that? And really, what is the difference? So, for example, if you shop at a farmer's market, those farmers are keeping like 85% of the money you spend. So 85 cents on the dollar. The farmers who are selling their stuff in the supermarket, they get 15 cents on the dollar. And then, grocery store, your food is on average coming from 1,500 miles away. And in the farmer's market, it's 50. So already by shopping at the farmer's market, you've put more money into your local economy and you've cut down on gas miles. And I think we all just, this is like, to me, this is how you feel good about being a citizen of the earth. I worry that when I recycle, it doesn't really, go somewhere. I have no idea. I don't have any proof. Nobody's like put a chip on my, you know,
Plastic
clamshell
bottle,
and
yeah.
showed me how it,
Yep.
really became a sweater. I just worry. And like, what's the carbon footprint on that? Right? Like, so I want to give people little things that they can do that have an impact. And all of the things that I've mentioned so far, they all have an impact. And so I feel like that's a lot of my focus is like, what can I do that can be helpful to you, that can give you an action where you don't have to dedicate your life like I do to helping small farmers. You can just add some little actions into your daily routine, your weekly routine, where farmers, can be supported. And, I summer's summer can be a little rough because that's when I do fundraising for the most part. I don't like to have my hand out all the time. I don't think that's what it's all about. Now, it's helpful for grants, but it's not the only thing. So in February, I do a Love for Farmers campaign, and that is about showing gratitude. It's about showing gratitude because through the grants process, and I can tell you how this happened, but I learned that when you recognize your farmers and you say, like, I really appreciate you and what you do, it is super meaningful. And so I have a process where you submit their names and their addresses to the For Farmers movement, and we send them a anonymous love letter for February.
I love that.
Yeah, it
That's
just
great.
arrives in their inbox, and then I have volunteers across the country who send out handwritten postcards to those same farmers, and so they get snail mail. And I mean, people are very moved by that. But also, like, I mean, for me, for you to listen to my podcast and say you want to talk to me and meet me, and we meet in person and we get this opportunity to speak, like, that is the opposite of being invisible. That is appreciation. And there's not anyone who wouldn't feel good if someone showed up at their office and said, "Hey, you don't know me, but I think what you're doing is great." That is what makes the world go round. And so that is what we do, through Love for Farmers. Um, the first year that we did grants, it was a 6 grant experiment. Um,
Okay.
Raised as much money as I could in a short period of time. It wasn't a lot of money. I was brand new, and I don't, at this point, even remember where I got it from. I don't even remember how I scraped it together. But we ran a grants process. I ran it on Instagram. I don't do that. I never did that again. It worked fine, but we had people came on and nominated farmers, and then I would get in touch with farmers, and they would think I was like not for real. And we have this grants process, and it's really easy and it's really straightforward. And you could get a mini grant for 500 or $1,000. I know they're very little, but if you apply, blah, blah, blah. I had a panel of reviewers, farmers and non-farmers, which was out of the gate a very smart decision. And we gave out grants that year. We gave out 6 grants, some 500, some $1,000. Those farmers are still doing really incredible things, even with the, even with the money that we gave them. They're still like in Newark farming in these 2 vacant lots. They're doing some vertical farming with the equipment that we gave them.
Wow.
We
Cool.
supported a greenhouse for drying kelp. And we helped a farm in Arizona with hay. They needed hay for their livestock. Now that hay is gone, but that farm, survived, and the farmers that were on our panel were like, hay is really expensive there, and it's more expensive now. And if they need hay, they need help. So we help them. So we do all kinds of things. We've done fencing and infrastructure, all kinds of infrastructure, repairing tractors, um, we helped a dayboat fisherman in Oregon pay off part of his debt for his sonar system. He can't go out day fishing if he doesn't have one. So he was grounded basically and just working on other boats trying to pay off his debt. So, it's all different kinds of things. We've done projects that are innovation based. In Wyoming, we funded a land link program where they built essentially a website and functionality where if you have land in Wyoming and you'd like it to be farmed, and farmers are looking who don't have land are looking for land to farm, that it's like match.com for farmers and
That's
landowners
great.
in Wyoming. And that has worked very well. We've had farmers actually connect and start farming that way. So it's a huge issue for beginning farmers not to have access to land. Um,
Any
Gosh,
stories that still stand out to you, like really moved you?
so many. I think everybody was really brought to tears by the fisherman. Just so, like salt of the earth, like he's just like
Yeah.
I'm using my body to pay off this debt. It's killing me. And he goes, I'm sure, maybe this isn't something that you do, but and we were like, we were done. Um, you know, there are so many, and you're not really sure when you fund them what the impact will be, because the impact is not just we help you afford something. Um, Sometimes it's yes, you helped us afford something, but you also lifted us up in a way that we couldn't be lifted by others. I think that knowing that a $500 grant might have 500 people behind it is really emotional for farmers to say, it's not a corporate grant, right? It's not like, hey, I'm writing a check. No, I busted my tushy to get 500 people to support your farm at $1 a piece because maybe they can't afford a lot, but they believe a lot in you. And so we're going to stand in your field with you. I shared a story. I have a weekly letter. I don't know if you saw it, but it came out this week. But I love this story so much because again, you don't know what it's going to do. So this farm in New Jersey, Working Dog Farms, they have chicken tractors, right? So you can move your chickens around to fresh grass. So they have layers, and so we can have eggs that have bright orange yolks from, birds eating bugs and, things they're supposed to eat. And they really explained that when you are a new farmer, it's expensive. Everything is expensive, expensive. You can't afford the things you know would make your life easier. You just can't. So they have a tractor, and their tractor has a bucket on the front, like a scooper. You can move dirt, and I'm sure that's, really important to them. And they were needing to move their chicken tractor. So they would scoop under the chicken tractor on one side, and they would put a farm wagon, like a little wagon, under the other side. And then she said they would pull it like hell and move it. And it was like impossible. And it caused fights. I just love this. So funny. I'm like, if they were fighting over this, and there are tears, and they're slowly breaking their chicken tractors, right? Because this is not ideal. So we funded a three-pronged fork that goes on the front of their tractor instead of the bucket. That goes under the chicken tractor, and they move it easily. And I don't put words in farmers' mouths. They're like, this saved us, saved our farm. So you just don't know what, you just don't know what your impact is until you ask, until you have a relationship and,
Yep.
say like, how are you doing? How's that three-pronged, fork working for you? Is that making your life easier? Or, and sometimes people's impact is like, yeah, I have a greens harvester. It's a little thing with ropes on it. It's really cool looking, and you just kind of like, looks like you're vacuuming over your spinach, and all your spinach goes into a little bag instead of like picking it, going insane, picking it by hand. And yeah, so I think like, that has an impact on their profitability. It has an impact on their
Absolutely.
efficiency. And that, doesn't necessarily make you cry, but it is really powerful and impactful, and it's something that's going to last for a really long time. Not, this isn't, you know,
Yeah.
gonna
So
go.
are the grants available all year? Like, are you constantly taking requests, or is there a period of time the grant people can apply for the grants? And just tell me a little bit about that process. I know
Sure.
you mentioned a panel, just so people know, what the opportunity is.
Absolutely. Well, every October 12th, which is National Farmers Day, we open up a nominations process to everyone, anyone who wants to nominate their farmer. And we have nominations from all 50 states every single time. Every year, our nominations go up. Last year was, because we've been doing it for a little while, our nominations were, I think we had 940. So 60 short of a really
That's,
nice round
oh,
1,000,
that's,
but I'm sure we'll get there this year.
I was going to
Um,
say you'll exceed it this year.
we'll exceed it. And it's so great, to hear it's like you win the lottery, like someone nominated you for something when you're just like doing your day job or your night job or your second job, so that is an important process. It helps us get to know new farmers across the country because we don't know, we want to spread the word that For
Right.
Farmers is here. We're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to support small farmers in high impact ways with these grants. And farmers have to wait 3 years to reapply, except if they're working on a collaborative grant. So after you're nominated, you can be nominated multiple times in a year. You can be nominated every year. People are knowledgeable, and they know how important it is for farmers to feel good and to be nominated. But then they apply, and we evaluate those grants with a panel of about 12 to 14 people. Uh, we probably need to add a few because we're getting more and more applications, but we have a process that has a real rubric behind it, that we're looking for certain things. Mainly, we're looking for people to answer the questions fully. So if it says we need a budget and your chicken tractor that you're going to build yourself, this is what I get is the budget they will share, like this much lumber, these many 2x4s, this many wing nuts, and they give me dollars and cents. And that is, that's kind of, what we're looking for. That's the hardest part, is the budget. Most of, everybody's got a project that they would love to do, or, quite simply, we need a 3-fork thing for the front of our tractor. It costs, $1,800, and we've saved all of it. but we, $500 would help us, whatever.
Okay.
So, and then we announce those grants on the first Wednesday after Thanksgiving, which is December 3rd.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And then comes the process of, farmers don't have to do very much to get the grants, but they do have to fill out a little form. If you're on the forfarmersmovement.com website, it says in the top right, it says meet the farmers. So they have to submit that information to a form. It's pretty simple. What's my name? What's the name of my farm? What state am I in? What is my farm? Like what kind of farm? How do I talk about my farm?
Right.
What did I get? What did I get my grant for? And what's the impact on me? So that is what they say. And then this is the part they hate. They have to submit a little 30-second video answering a question. And I think you saw some of those
Yes.
answers to different questions, but it goes to like, what's the hardest thing? What's one thing you would like a non-farmer to know about farming that you think they're missing? Yeah. What would, there are, and
That's
now there were 10 questions. Some of them were dumb questions, I'll admit it. It's hard to come up with 10 really good questions. And, you get to the end of the year and you're like, oh, I won't use that question again. But, I think it's so important for farmers to, especially small farmers, they don't have an ad budget. They've got like free Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. So if they can talk about, they need to get used to talking about
Yeah.
like, hey, we had a really bad week.
Yep.
It was awful. Like we had a storm, we lost this, we have a tree. People want to get behind you when you're honest, right? Like, I can't believe how many eggs we have come to the market this weekend because like our chickens are going crazy laying eggs, whatever.
Yep.
It's like get used to talking about what you do because that helps me close the gap. And so, you know, some most of the farmers are like, Dana, all right, fine. But some wince and complain. And I'm like, you can do it. And I promise this is going to help you. And more often than not, they come back to me and they're like, I was being so silly. Like, I don't feel like I look good. I was like, have you seen me on Instagram? I will talk to you all day. And, sweaty from the barn, dirty, in a ball gown, like, whatever. I don't care. And I just think like people have to, get out there and tell their stories.
Yeah.
They get to be known to their customers.
Absolutely. So you gave 6 grants the first year, and how has that progressed?
So we did 6, 20, 49, 105.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Doubling each time or more than doubling. I think 100 is a really good round number for the fall. That said, so I saw one of my grant reviewers at this event the other day, and she looked at me sideways and she's like, "What's this $1 million thing, Dana?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm going to raise $1 million?" And she's like, "I know, but is that going through our grants process in the fall?" I'm like, "No." Let me explain.
She got really nervous,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. She was like, "We can barely handle
I was
what
like, how can we
she's
review
sweating."
those
She's like, "This
grants?
is hard. It's such hard work." And it is a combination of that rubric and
Yeah.
trust and farmers and non-farmers together, being honest with each other, asking the right questions, sharing when they think somebody's wrong about an application. Like, I think you're missing the point. This is really important. Maybe they didn't say it, but I see it, kind of thing. Um, so yeah, there's like all of that. Plus there's this magic because we're a group, right? And we have new people and we have people who have been with me for the whole time. And, then we all get I have a smaller group that I get paranoid. We're missing something. I said, let's go through all the no's, read them all over again and make sure we didn't miss something. Because I don't, we want to do a good job. Anyway, so there's a magic component. And so she was in a panic. And I said, listen, one for farmers, that's what it's called, really backs up something that I've been saying for years. And that is that I would literally 100 times over rather have $1 from 1 million people than $1 million from one person. It is a movement. It is meant to bring people along. It is meant for people who don't support farmers to support farmers in a way that's significant. And $1, let's be honest, I don't even know anything I can buy for $1. Maybe I don't even know if I can buy a paper clip. But I know that I can take that dollar and I can line it up with 499 other dollars, and I can help all of us change someone's life for the better. I'm 100% sure about that. And so that's the idea behind One for Farmers. And I'm going to figure out how to get on a national stage and spread the word, because I think if people understand it, they will do it. They will give. And a lot of, there's an option. You can give $1 a month for $12. You give me $12, that counts $1 a month. Or, you can do it for $1 a day or $1 every week for $52. So people are, I would say $12 and $52 is pretty popular, but it's really important to spread the word about the opportunity to stand in this, gap hand to hand, so that we connect from the far side to the farmer side. And what I'd like to do with that money is to support the farmers at least whatever let's just make this happen by December. I would like to stand in the gap for those farmers who had funds rescinded that were promised money by the USDA. So there are USDA grant is very different from ours. The application is complicated. You have to jump through a lot of hoops. They ask a lot of questions. They want to know what your bank account looks like. For Farmers does not want any of that. But they go through all of those hoops and they sign a contract, and they don't get their money up front. For Farmers, you get your money up front and you go and spend it. And hopefully you're going to tell me how it's impacted your farm and your life. I would love to hear that. If you don't tell me, that's also your prerogative. Most people do. But the idea that you jumped through all those hoops in good faith, signed a contract, had your partner at the USDA sign a contract, and then turn around and have that money rescinded when you had to spend it to get reimbursed. So maybe you spent $30,000. You had to take out a loan. Maybe that loan was from someone maybe it was from the bank, right? And now you have a $30,000 expense that you were not expecting, and you were not being irresponsible. So I think there are many, many farmers like this across the country who are hurting. And I would like that $1 million to help them out of a hole, and a hole they shouldn't be in. We should not be welching on our farmers.
So that campaign is running, it's running now. And is there an end date for that campaign this year at least?
Well, the end date is at $1 million, but I'm hoping that's by December.
Okay, that's the goal.
That's the goal. And you know what? I mean, I'm one person and I can tolerate a lot, but I can't fundraise every day. And I don't think you want to hear me talk about it all year long. So I'm like officially ending it in the beginning of December. So around the 1st or 2nd of December. The 2nd of December, I will remind you, is Giving Day, National Giving Day. And so when that day's over, we'll end it. And hopefully we'll, have enough to talk about. I have some ideas on how to get it out there. We'll see if they work.
I'm sure that's awesome. No, that's terrific. I just have to ask, what's the farmers market treasure hunt?
Oh, well,
it just sounds intriguing.
Don't you want to do that?
I like that.
Well, it's funny because I didn't officially do a treasure hunt this morning, but I did take my interns. I have interns for 6 weeks.
Yes, I heard about that from what your write-up and everything. That's
Yeah,
great.
so they came to the farmers market with me. We have been on Zoom because, they live in the Bronx and New Jersey. And but we met at the Union Square Farmers Market this morning. They met some of the farmers that we funded. They've met the farmers whose vegetables were on the table this weekend. A farmer who has helped me with whatever. She's come and done a speaking event. And it was really, really fun and very, very interesting. And something that I do when I go to the farmers market is I always buy something I've never had before. Like I've just never tried or never cooked with. And I think a lot of people are going to farmers markets and they have kids in tow, or they're just fun adults, So, let's go around the farmers market. Like, get your kids. What's the funniest
Yep.
farm name? And go find the farmer and ask them why. Why? I think it's a great conversation starter. I always say, like, when you're, you know, getting to know your farmers, it's a little bit like dating. You can't ask them their whole life story while they're making change for someone. You have
Well,
to.
that's the thing. They're usually so intensely busy at those markets. It's hard to have sometimes engaging conversations, but
I know.
but
Try.
it's good that they're busy. That's a good thing.
It's so
So it's
good.
like
Well,
you're
try
happy
me.
with it.
I'm
Yeah.
like, hi guys, it's so good to see you. I just saw you, I realized, but I'm bringing my interns today. So it was
Great.
funny. So they were very generous, and I got to ask a few questions, and they did too. And we had some really good peaches, and we got some yogurt. And but I think, it's a great way to get closer to your farmers, to have a more, intimate relationship. Just even asking them, "Hey, I love your farm name is my favorite. Why do you guys call your farm that?"
Yep.
Or, do you have how would you cook this? Like, it's grass-fed beef, so it's very lean. Like, what would you do? Like, how would you do it? And you can just have these little conversations. So whether you're, you've got kids in tow and you need them to be engaged and getting closer to their farmers, or, you're just, you want to be more engaged yourself, it's kind of fun. Um, Speaking of farmers markets, in a week from Saturday, I'm going to Minneapolis. Did I
Oh,
tell you?
yes, I think I read this in your newsletter.
Yeah. So I had this idea over a year ago that I really believe when we're doing grants. Now we're doing national grants, and I'm fundraising from across the country. Will you give up the price of your coffee today for farmers? So people will do that, and that's fun. And if you do it, I'll match it. Whatever. So I've done all different kinds of things like this. The one for farmers, then there's dinner events and what have you. But I want the fundraising and also the giving and the nominating. I want there to be a regional, foothold. So, in partnership with these farmers markets across the country, many of whom are using my farmers market field guide to communicate, they share it. It's free. They share it with their customers. This is how you can get closer to us. You can come
Yep.
and use this, and it's fun. And here's some really good facts, things you probably didn't know. And anyway, so the idea is to go and walk a mile in a farmer's boots. Here's my hat.
That's great.
Um,
I love it.
you register, you get to walk a mile in a farmer's boots hat, and that's the idea, right? That it is exactly that. Like, let's have empathy. Let's understand a little bit more about our farmers. It says it in the title. And the idea is that we go and we walk. We're having a pancake breakfast that is it's not something they always have, but there's a woman in their farmers market who used to do them, and she shows up and she brings her bacon from her own hogs, and um, where they're bringing a tractor, and we're walking as a community really to support and to draw attention to the importance of how important it is for us to be closer to our farmers. So it's all the same message, but the idea is that when you register to walk for $25, all of that money, 100% of it, goes into farmer grants for the local area, which
Nice.
in Minneapolis is Wisconsin and Minnesota. So when when it comes time to nominate farmers, we will be reaching out to that area. They will be reaching out to nominate your farmers. Your farmers will get nominated. Hopefully they will apply, and the money that we raise there will go to their farmers. And when we get
Excellent.
200 walkers, and we're not close, so if you know anyone in Minneapolis, when we get to 200 walkers, $5,000 from a matching grant will be released to that
Okay.
community, which is
I'll think about
exciting.
who I've interviewed. I think I had some people from that area, so we can
Yeah,
reach out to them.
that would be amazing. I This is the beautiful thing. The dinner that you came to, I mean, I had that on my back for 2 years. I dragged that event to fruition for 2 years, begging and borrowing and stealing. Not really, but begging and begging, pushing and convincing. And this year, that was not the case. It was packed. It was fun. People were there because they wanted to be there because they'd heard previous years were amazing. And I think that's the kind of fortitude you have to do anything like this, is that you have to have faith and you have to continue even when it's hard. And I, we don't have a lot of walkers at the moment. And I asked this morning the manager at the farmer's market if there was a time or a level at which she wanted to pull the plug and postpone. I mean, I'm flying to Minneapolis, right? Like
Yep.
for 10 people or 2,000 people, either way. And her answer was, Dana, this is important and we have to do this now so we can make it bigger later. For farmers is important and our market is important. And so if we walk with a dozen people who all have a better relationship with our farmers market because of it, then it was 100% worth it.
I like that message because it's very hard when you do, only a few show up. But I always tell people you value and those people who show up, they're there for a reason, and that's like step one. So that is a really important
I
message.
mean, what a great partner.
Yep.
Because I don't want to put out the partners. I mean, I just don't know anyone in Minneapolis. I'm getting to know a lot of people in Minneapolis. And I got a DM right before I came on your podcast, and people see there's whatever an Instagram reel or carousel that's talking about it. And if you comment walk, you get a link to registration. And so then I go back in and I'm like, hey, am I going to see you? Are we walking together? And this lady's like, yeah. And I'm like, you're kidding. This is so exciting. I'm gonna see you. And she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to bring, what do you think? I might bring my boyfriend and some friends.
Sure.
Oh, my girl, let's go. Yeah, bring that. And then she starts talking about how, how important farmers are and how she doesn't feel like she says that enough.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there's the crank. Here it goes.
Absolutely. I have two quick questions for you. On your website, you have that facts page, and I was reading through them, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you probably, are very familiar with all the facts on the page. Like, what is something on that page that many people don't know?
You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. Last year, a farmer who spoke at my event he was like, Dana didn't tell me what to say, so I Googled some facts and I want to do a quiz. So he did a quiz, like, how many farmers do you think we have? Like, what percentage? Let's just do that. What percentage of our society do you think are farmers? And they're like, 40%. He's like, lower. 25%. Lower. I mean, try 1%. And so I think people were aghast. And I think I mean, I share facts when I'm in a season where I'm not totally behind the scenes working like a dog on, events and walks and things like that. I like to share facts because I think, especially the more shocking ones they're attention getting. We only have, 1% of us are farmers and ranchers, and, we're feeding the other, 99% of society who are like, have their head in the clouds about how hard that is. I think the numbers of, farmers lost is, a really eye-opening. And that's, the most recent census was, for 2022. So in that 5-year period, it was, 141,733 farms and 20 million acres of farmland that we won't get back. And I think, you heard people gasp.
Yeah.
And it's not just that. Like, farmers work 2 jobs. They work a 9 to 5 and they work a farm job. And I think most shockingly, the average net income for small farmers is negative $323. Negative, like less than zero. And so I think, how do they make that, happen? They make it happen with that off-farm job and
Yep.
by working 24/7,
Yep.
with
But they
love.
still
And
farm because they love
with
it.
love and passion, and it gets under their skin, and they want that healthy food in their communities, and they want to share it with their customers, and they want to have that relationship. And all of those things are so important. I think one of the things that I think about small farmers that doesn't happen in the US or in, Western Europe as much as it does in the rest of the world. I mean, we have a more industrialized agriculture system, but these small farmers are standard bearers, right? They're doing organic farming. They're doing better than organic farming. They're doing rotational grazing. They're defining what regenerative looks like. They're taking the land back to the way it was when the buffalo roamed, when, things happened, became fertile lands naturally by, natural process, not by caging up animals in, in a feedlot, which is just always going to be horrible. And I think that having small farmers as those standard bearers for big ag, I mean, how do we know that big ag is bad or that, the emissions are too great? How do we know there are other options unless we have small farmers showing us the way? Right? Like, so I know small farmers who have taken, farms from industrial to regenerative. So in their lifetime, like not even in a lifetime, but in 25 years, like that's not that long. It just takes commitment. And I think that those examples, you think they're few, but they are powerful examples of what can be. And we don't have to be, we could still feed the world. We could feed our communities. We could have a strong, robust economy and, still be safe in the, the worst of, possible times. Like, if we're worried about wartime or whatever it is, we could still have everything we need if we could rely on and support our small farmers. I think we're doing, we're just not doing a good enough job. And you know, it's it's not only up to the government, that's for sure. It's up to us. But when, the government isn't doing their job well, the USDA is welching on grants. They're, doubling down on industrial ag, which is depleting, our soils and, you know, poisoning the soils and putting things on food we don't really want to eat or don't need, and certainly are getting sick from. Like those things are, why are we having these conversations? Why is this controversial? Why are we,
Right.
nobody needs that. And it's, I hear, especially around the argument around glyphosate, which is Roundup, or, it's used as a desiccant or, as an, a weed killer, but also as just a means for drying out crops to get them to harvest faster. Like all of those arguments are, oh, well, we won't be as productive. Well, yeah, that's silly. I mean, you can say that in your marketing materials, our farmers will go under. Well, they need to transition off of it. So yeah, there may be a transition period, but farmers do actually have high yield without that stuff. They do.
Exactly.
And
And
they
we
know
have proof of that.
no, they don't. Well, they do. I know those farmers.
Yes, exactly. So do you have a favorite vegetable?
Hmm. It depends on the day. I'm kind of into kohlrabi. Everybody's like, "Oh, kohlrabi's not good."
A lot of
I
people don't know what it is. I
Yeah,
remember we
well, I
used to
think that's
sell
why
it.
it's fun.
Yes, it is. It looks like an alien to me.
It's like an alien, but it's crunchy like an apple. I had it at a restaurant last night, with
Oh, we
with
used to love it. And then you have the green one and you have the purple one. So we used to grow it, but it was the biggest conversation piece at the
yeah,
farm stand.
yeah, that's a really fun one.
That's
I
great.
really love a watermelon radish. I'm not good at growing radishes, but I could eat my weight in watermelon radishes, I think. Yeah.
Good.
I
Okay.
like tomatillos, but I grow those, so I think those are really fun. I make a mean tomatillo salsa.
Oh, yes.
And I'm very,
Yes.
I get a lot of attention for my salsa, so I love my tomatillos. And they have those cute little lanterns on them.
Yes. And some people would plant a lot of them in a small space. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. This thing is going to take over. Like when
Oh
they
my
take
God.
all, one plant can take over a whole bed. And I sometimes see people, they plant them like tomato plants. And I'm like, no, no, no. You can't
I
do that.
did. I've planted only 6 this year, and I planted more before, like 12, thinking,
You
oh,
get a ton of tomatillos off one plant.
so many. And I have the
It's a lot of
cages, and they're
fun.
way beyond them. Next time you come, I'm going. It's like I was so on it, and then everything sprinted.
I know.
I'm just like,
It's a
all right,
lot.
it'll be fine.
Well, thank you for all you do. Your work is amazing. How you've evolved this it is so impactful. So if there's anything I can do, I definitely, will support whatever help you need from me. So thank you. Appreciate it.
I've loved talking with you. It's really fun. It's fun to, talk with people who get it. But also thank you for being interested and for seeing everything. There is it's a lot of work. It's all of my years of experience I've poured into this, and I'm never good at asking for help, but I have become better at it. And I love when, people are willing to step in and help. Joe, who's retiring from sheep farming, he's like, you know what I want to do in my retirement? I'm like, what? Golf? I don't know. What do you like to do? He's like, I want to work with you on Four Farmers. So between
Wow.
you and Joe, it's more compliments than I can really bear.
That's terrific. I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time.